Hey everybody, how's it going? I hope you're having a lovely Thursday morning, and I hope that wherever you are, the weather is better than this seasonal affective disorder garbage that we get here every single day in New Hampshire. Hello, darkness, my old friend. I am starting to grow just a little tired of every morning looking out my window and being greeted by a nice basket of gray depression. So, what I'd like to discuss today is a follow-up on the video that I did, Zero Motorcycles, Zero Repairability. There was a point I touched on in that video, is that simply because a device is electric rather than internal combustion engine does not mean it needs to inherently be less repairable. And I do believe that there will eventually be a severe cultural war backlash against the move to electric vehicles and the move to green energy if every single company involved in that space starts taking on a more 2020s idea of ownership and a less of a 1900s idea of ownership. And I wanted to just kind of get into that with this video. So somebody was talking to me about their experience with Zero, and I wanted to share some of it here. He says, I'm an owner of a Zero motorcycle. I don't want to paste my experience in the comment section publicly as I still have a warranty. I've had many bad experiences with them over the past year and a half of ownership and contacted a lawyer. I can share some experience. Zero does not repair their motors, they only swap them. The motors have weak bearings which tend to fail mostly if the belt of the final drive is a bit tighter, even if within spec. So a bearing, which costs a couple of $100, results in a bill of around $3,000 with labor. If you find a salvaged motor, it does not help you because it has to be enabled by an authorized dealer. Yeah, enabled by an authorized dealer. Now, with something like an electric bike, whether you're dealing with something like a Suron, which good luck legally registering this in many states, or something like my electric bike, where you can put a Bafang BBS HD or a Cyclone 5,000 watt motor on it with a nice BAC 2000 motor controller to really get it up to the speed of a motorcycle. If I have a motor that fails, I literally just unplug it, I unplug the phase wires, I unplug the sensor wire, and I plug a new one in. The motor is dumb. It has no computer in it whatsoever, so I can simply replace it without having to care about an authorized dealer. This is not something that is a necessity for electric vehicles or electric motorcycles. Simply because the device is electric does not mean that it has to be inherently less repairable. It is simply the way that the companies choose to put these devices together that make it as such. It is their choice to not make parts available. It is their choice to not make manuals available to anybody who's not an authorized dealer. It is their choice to not allow you to actually fix the product as an authorized repair center if you do not also sell them. This is not something inherent to them. And in addition, it says that there's also a small chip in the casing of the motor and the motor controller that can fail easily and would be fairly easy to swap, but it is not sold and the result is again the same. And this is a video that I would highly suggest you check out if you're interested in a Zero motorcycle and if you're interested in electric motorcycles in general. This is a really cool channel that has a lot of good stuff on it. I've been learning a lot from watching it. It's called New Zero Land, and I will link to it down below. He's only got 8,400 subscribers, and I hope that he gets more as more people become interested in this type of stuff. And again, he does put a good amount of information out there, and he puts it out in a very entertaining fashion. The next thing that I wanted to draw attention to is another thing that really seems to be more, again, a sign of the times rather than a sign of simply electric vehicles, which is this whole thing where you buy a product and then if you want the entirety of the product, you pay again. So what do I mean here? Let's just take a look at Zero's Cypher store. So there are a couple of things that seem to keep electric vehicles from being able to compete with internal combustion engine vehicles among people that are debating them. There's A, the speed that it takes to refill your tank or charge your battery. B, the range that you get compared to an internal combustion engine vehicle. C, the price. So how is it Zero is taking on these issues? Well, what they're doing is they sell you the device, but if you want it to charge faster, you need to give them $595. Again, we're not talking about some sort of massive change here. Do keep in mind, when you hit those little question marks, it says dealer install, no. So it's not like they're installing a new cooling system for the charging system so that when you plug it in, it can cool the battery properly or heat the battery properly depending on the temperature you're in, and therefore allow it to fast charge safely. They're not installing new charging circuitry. It's $600 to unlock the ability of the hardware you already purchased to make it charge. When we're talking about range, 10% extended range is going to cost $1,295 after you've already paid well over $20,000 for the motorcycle. So again, keep in mind here, we're not talking about software functionality. It's one thing to buy something and then pay extra money for a plugin or something where there's not really much of there's a cost of the development, but there's not a cost to be able to supply that particular piece of software over that software. We're talking about lithium batteries that you are carrying around. They have already paid for the lithium that they are putting into that motorcycle. You've already paid for the lithium that went into that motorcycle. The reason that your bike is less efficient than it otherwise would be is because you are literally carrying around lithium that you cannot access. You are carrying around cells that you cannot get the benefit of the full charge of. And that is something that's going to affect or dock your efficiency a little bit on this electric motorcycle. And you're not able to get access to that which you bought unless you give them more money. There's also an interesting one here, and I just wonder how this is going to go over with motorcycle culture, and we're going to get into that in a moment. Claims the perfect spot. Park mode allows slow speed reverse and creep forward to maneuver into spaces on steep inclines. Select this function in the dash menu to use, and again, you have to pay for it. So if you want the ability to move forward and backwards slowly, that's not something that you can just do. Like on mine, again, if I want to creep forward, what I do, I lower the integral gain of my motor controller a lot, so I can just do this with the throttle really slow. You have to pay them almost $200 to get access to that. Now, motorcycle culture in general appears to be based on a couple of things. And to be clear, I'm not in any sort of motorcycle group or anything like that. It seems to be an embracing of freedom, independence, and embracing of independent eccentricity. So there are people out there that have this idea that all people who ride motorcycles are crazy gang members that rob and steal and pillage and commit crime, and that's hardly the case at all. When it comes to the bikers that I've met, they're all people that live life on their own terms. They don't necessarily believe in doing things the same way everybody else does things. They have their, they think independently, and above all, they're open to being a little bit weird, and they embrace the fact that they're weird, and they don't really care what other people think of them being weird or liking strange things or being into different hobbies and things like that. They don't really care. It's not that thing where they're afraid of being judged, and because I'm afraid of being judged poorly, I'm just going to do what everybody else does. It's a big part of motorcycle culture, along with just this embracing of the idea of I'm going to do things on my own terms. Now, doing things on their own terms does not mean that they're evil. It does not mean that they're immoral. It does not mean that they are going to go out of their way to hurt other people. Quite the opposite. It simply means that they like to set the terms for their own life. Now, when you're trying to get electric motorcycles adopted into a community where there's already a lot of issues trying to get it adopted, do you think it makes sense to try and sell this device to a freedom-loving culture and community when you're saying you have to give them $200 to be able to control the speed that it moves back and forth if you want to be able to park easier? Do you think it is going to be an easy sell to people who embrace this type of culture that you're literally carrying around lithium that you paid for, that you're paying for the transport of that back and forth when you charge it, that you cannot access unless you give them $1,000? Do you think in a world where the biggest barrier to people buying electric vehicles is affordability, its ability to charge quickly, the repairability of them, and the range, that charging extra for the range that they've already paid for, charging extra for fast charging, access to fast charging circuitry that they've already paid for, and making them inherently less repairable than an internal combustion engine vehicle, it almost, in many ways, to be honest with you, and to be clear, this is not a conspiracy. This is just me just spitting crap out there. It's if internal combustion engine manufacturers of motorcycles wanted to get people to hate electric bikes, I think that they would create a company like Zero. Seriously, that seems like the best way to keep people from transitioning. Is like create a company that creates one of the only electric motorcycles that you can legally register in your state and just do shit like this to make it so that everybody just laughs at it and nobody wants to own one. I wanted an electric motorcycle. I think they're cool. The reason I wound up getting just building my own little junky electric bike that you see over here is because I did not want to deal with any of this bullcrap if I'm paying that much money. Again, it's one thing if I'm getting this electric motorcycle for $2,000 or $4,000. I'm paying over $20,000. I don't want to deal with all this bullshit. It's just I just know, and this is one of the things that comes up in my comments a lot of the time is why, I am okay with people having electric bikes or motorcycles as long as it's something that they register and insure like everybody else. And one of the big problems is that the electric bikes and motorcycles that actually embrace your ability to fix your own device, to be able to replace your battery, to be able to actually, charge, if you create your own fast charging circuit, it'll just, you can actually use it. That will allow you to go back and forth. They don't have these kind of nonsensical limitations. They're devices that, again, best of luck registering this in your state. Best of luck taking something, putting a 5,000 watt cyclone motor on it and registering it in your state. That's probably not going to go well for you. But those are the devices that actually respect your freedom in the manner that internal combustion engine vehicles did a long time ago. And one of the analogies I like to make here is it's kind of like computing when it comes to, let's say, an Android phone or an iPhone versus a desktop or a laptop. This is a Samsung S10e, and for the most part, this is a computer, just like this is a computer. Again, this has a Wi-Fi radio, Wi-Fi antenna, whatever in it. This has Wi-Fi and LTE radio in it. This has a screen. This has a screen. This is a processor, RAM, and storage. This is a processor, RAM, and storage. This is an operating system. This has an operating system. So now the thing is, with many modern phones, you have devices like the iPhone where you can't even install the apps that you want unless the manufacturer tells you can. And with Android, many, many, many Android devices nowadays, it is typically the norm that they are that they have a locked bootloader. So if you want to install a different operating system of your choice, you're kind of screwed unless you go out of your way to find a way to hack into the phone, which sometimes doesn't come out for up to a year or 2 years after a device is released. Whereas with a desktop or a laptop computer, you can install any operating system on it that you want. That's just normal. You can, again, you don't have a locked BIOS and bootloader to that extent on many of these devices. We would reject that. And now the reason is not because it's not because a phone is fundamentally, inherently, and technologically different than a computer. It's because smartphones started to become popular in like 2007 to 2022, whereas personal computers started to become popular like late 70s to mid 90s. And I would suggest that 40 to 50 years ago, we had a different concept of freedom than we do now. 40 to 50 years ago, the idea that you can't choose what operating system you install on your computer was absolutely insane because we had a different culture back then than we do now. The reason that the phone has a locked bootloader, the reason that you can't install whatever operating system you want on this as easily as you can on a computer, is not because the technology is fundamentally inherently different, but rather because these devices are manufactured 50 years later when we have seemingly less respect in our culture for freedom. What I would suggest is that electric vehicles or cell phones or any of these things are not the problem. The true problem is the rot inherent in our culture when it comes to freedom, when it comes to ownership. When it comes to electric vehicles, the reason that you're dealing with all of this stuff, the reason that they are seemingly less repairable, the reason that you can only swap out a motor at an authorized dealer, that's not because it's an electric motorcycle. That's because the company made it that way. And the companies are making these devices this way, not because electric motors, not because electric motorcycles or electric cars are inherently less fixable as a function of the fact that they're electric, but rather because these devices are becoming popular within a culture where we no longer embrace freedom and independence the way that we did 50 to 70 to 100 years ago. And I'm not suggesting that we turn back the clock. I'm not suggesting that we use cars that don't have a computer in it forever, or that we use cars that are internal combustion engine that get, 10 miles per gallon or whatever forever as a means of fighting back against this. Rather, what I'm suggesting is that we fix the rot that is in our culture where we don't have respect for the ability to repair our own products. We don't respect the right to ownership, the right to freedom that we just kind of used to have in our culture a long time ago. And I think if we address that rot, then everything else will be fixed. But we have to fix that from the ground up. And to be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure how we go about doing that. How do you think we go about doing that? I'm very curious to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Also, do you think I'm being reasonable here in what I'm saying about a company like Zero, where they really do seem to be taking all the things that make electric vehicles less likely to be purchased by this particular segment of the population, by this particular demographic, and just magnifying it as much as humanly possible? I don't understand it. Again, maybe they're making, and if they're making money hand over fist way more than my business and they're happy with that, then I don't know, maybe they know something I don't, but I just don't see this as the way to get people to want to adopt electric vehicles. I don't think it's a way to get a freedom and independence loving sector of the demographic of the population to want to accept these types of vehicles, and I particularly would not blame them. Again, the only thing I'd ask, don't blame the fact that it's inherently electric. Blame the fact that these devices are being created in what I believe is a rotting culture. See you all in the next video. Bye now. Oh, last thing, one more thing. In Nebraska today, there is going to be a vote on a right to repair bill. So I did mention in this old video, the litmus test of Nebraska politicians that claim to support farmers, will they pass? We will learn today if those particular politicians actually do support right to repair, or if they're going to spend 8 hours filibustering the bill. I'm very curious to see how that goes. And in addition, many of you have been asking, will I respond to this video that came out from the CEO and founder of Future Motion, who makes the One Wheel? They did an 11-minute and 9-second video that, in my opinion, and in the opinions of many in the community, really did not address most of the issues. And that video really doesn't go over, it doesn't answer a lot of the community's questions or problem issues. It doesn't solve them. And if anything, they actually double down on some of their stances where, yeah, we're just not going to let you replace a battery. You can't do that, which I haven't responded to this yet because I would like to actually get as many citations and as many arguments from members of that community as humanly possible to really debunk this without just going into it, quick and nitty gritty. So you'll see that coming out over the next couple of days. It's going to be a quick, concise, well-cited response as to why much of what is in this video is, in my opinion, untrue. And again, at the end of the day, I do not want to see a company like Future Motion go under. I don't want to see them go out of business. What I'd like to see is them change the practices that they have towards their customers. People who use one-wheel scooters, they love these things. It's an amazing community of people that genuinely form new friendships, new bonds, new life-lasting friends, and like it cures their depression, it makes them happy, it gets them outside. They love this device. And I want to see them be able to continue to enjoy the device, but I want to see the company that sells that device to these loyal users treat them like the loyal users that they are, rather than just, disposable. I'll see you in the next video. Bye now. You could probably tell I still haven't got my damn Da Vinci dongle, but I'm going to find one. Anyway, see you later.